Next one. So another one on business tenancies and what happens where there's been a breakdown.
I hate commercial.
Yeah, commercial. But again, I'll talk about commercial in a second, okay? But it's always really about remembering how Section 25 and 26 work, and 30.
I like those though, they're quite nice.
They are.
I like my Section 5, my Section 26 is 6 months to 12 months, so
you got it.
Fine,
that is all you need, actually. If you know that.
And the reasons why.
The reasons why under Section 30. Yeah, as long as you know that, you're okay. And what happens if they don't agree new terms on a new tenancy?
Goes to the court.
Yeah.
The court can, I know this, the court can agree the new terms. It'll be on rent-wise, it can be market rent, I think. Yeah. And there's a certain period, like a certain term, I think it's 10 years that they can't go on 2 years.
So close. 15. But other than that, you're spot on. And you've answered the question this time without even going through the question, which is very clever, because that is exactly the question. You've done brilliantly. So the question is exactly what you've just kind of preempted, actually. So I'll just go through it very quickly, but you're absolutely right.
Please.
Solicitor is acting for the tenant of a business premises in connection with an application for the grant of a new tenancy following service of Section 26. So this is the tenant preempting. And I'll just talk about that briefly in a sec. Although the landlord is not opposing the grant of a new tenancy, the tenant is concerned that they will not reach agreement on terms. Solicitor advises the tenant that in default of the agreement, the court has power to order a new tenancy for a new duration. Tenant has asked for the clarification. In other words, tenant said, "What are you talking about?" Basically, as I always joke with my wife, do you remember, what was it called? Different Strokes. What are you talking about, Willis? Do you remember that? Many years ago. You're too young, Joe. You're too young.
Oh, I'm not, but no.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's basically saying what you want about. So, if the landlord and tenant don't agree the terms, what can the court do? Exactly what you just said. Order a new tenancy on whatever terms they decide. 2 exceptions: market rent and not exceeding 15. Okay. But let me just talk this through just very quickly. Okay. Section 25, as you know, is where the landlord basically knows that the tenant is coming to the end of their contractual term. Commercial, yeah? And they can do one of 3 things with Section 25. They can either basically say to the tenant, all good, you can stay, okay? And we're going to go with exactly the same terms. So no opposition, same terms. I'm happy, you can stay. That's option 1. Option 2 is you can stay, new terms. Okay, and these are the new terms, blah, 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 blah. Now, unlike the court, the landlord can impose any new terms. Okay, if they don't agree, we've already said what happens. Then there is option 3. And option 3 is bugger off. Okay, you're out of here. And the reasons are grounds under Section 30. Okay, non-payment of rent, persistent late payment, breach of covenants. I want the property back for myself. I want the property back to refurbish and reconstruct. Blah, 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 blah. So that's what they must do. They must then give the tenant time to respond to that. And then they go to court and get the order to get them gone. Section 26 is the preemption, if you like, by the tenant. And it's exactly the same process. Not less than 6 months, not more than 12 months. Serve notice on the landlord. Tell them what terms you want. Exactly the same. Landlord then has time to respond. If it doesn't get sorted, ends up in court. Exactly the same. One slight point, or 2 actually on this. First point is this. Tenant can't use Section 26 unless they've been there for 1 year minimum. So there is a 1 year minimum time frame that they must have had their contractual tenancy for. Now, if you think about a commercial lease, generally, it's never going to be just 1 year. The normal commercial lease is 5. Normal, okay, but it doesn't need to be. It can be anything. But it can't be less than a year. The only thing I can think of that is less than a year are these pop-up leases, you know, for like Christmas and things like that on Oxford Street. But then they can't do that. But that's probably going to be more of a license than a lease anyway, to be fair. Now, the other point I was going to make is that if the landlord wants the property back for reconstruction, demolition, okay, they have to have owned the property for 5 years. 5 years. There's a 5-year rule. But that 5 years runs to the end of the notice period that you're giving them or they're giving you, not any other time. So there was a question in the books about a landlord having owned the property for 4 years.
Yeah.
And they want the property back, do you remember? But the tenant had given a year's notice. So if they've given a year's notice, that covers the 5 years. Yeah, absolutely right. Brilliant. Okay. So
but they can only use 25 and 26 or they can't use it if there's no, the health warning. So they can only use those if there is no health warning. If they're going to take it out of the contract, they have to have a health warning.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So if you're gonna contract out of the act, you can do that, but you have to do it in writing to the tenant and give them, as you rightly say, a health warning, telling them what the ramifications are of contracting out. You have to warn them that they're not going to get this new tenancy. Yeah, absolutely right.
I've got a quick question. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So if for the 26, section 26, is that only for the tenant who wishes to remain? If the tenant wishes to leave, they don't need to do anything. Is that right?
No, you're half right. So it's not 26 if they don't want to stay, but it is 27 if they don't want to stay. So there is another one at 27, which basically gives you the procedure for the tenant saying to the landlord, "Thanks very much, I'm out of here." And the only rule really is that it's got to be within 2 months' notice minimum of the end of your tenancy. But you're never going to get a question that tells you the tenant wants to go, because they're always going to question you about new terms and stuff like that. But in real life, 27 is what the tenant would serve if they don't want to stay. So it's 25, 26, 27 and 30.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent. All right, brilliant.